Hi, everyone. This week is the second week of Lent. Lent is a time of turning back to God in preparation for Easter, the most important day of the year. Lent is 40 days and is a purple season. Purple stands for drawing close to God through opening our hearts up in prayer. This week's gospel is from the Gospel of Mark. Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no fuller on earth could bleach them. Then Elijah appeared to them along with Moses. And they were conversing with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, "Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He hardly knew what to say. They were so terrified. Then a cloud came, casting a shadow over them. From the cloud came a voice, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." Suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone but Jesus alone with them. As they were coming down the mountain, he charged them not to relate what they had seen to anyone, except when the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what rising from the dead meant. This week's gospel story is called the Transfiguration because Jesus is transfigured, which means he appears in a completely new way. So let's see what the Transfiguration was. The story starts with Jesus taking Peter, James, and John up a high mountain. Jesus appeared as blindingly bright white. As we have started to notice, God often appears to his people on mountains and reveals something new. For example, Moses, leading God's people to their promised land, went up a holy mountain and was given God's commands for his people to follow. Elijah was a prophet who taught about God and performed miracles. He was famous for going up to heaven in a chariot of fire. But Elijah also had an experience on the same holy mountain as Moses. God asked him to come to the mountain, but instead Elijah hid in a cave. God asked him to come out. A great wind passed, but God was not in the wind. An earthquake passed, but God was not in the earthquake. A fire passed, but God was not in the fire. How did God come to Elijah? As a quiet voice. So God revealed to Elijah on the mountain that we need to listen carefully for God. Have you ever thought you heard God speaking to you in a quiet voice? Maybe through your conscience, or through prayer, or quietness, or through others in your life? So knowing these 2 stories, when we see that Moses and Elijah appeared in the mountain with Jesus, there must be something special going on. God might be giving commands, and he might be telling us to listen. And we are also seeing that Jesus must be really special if he is appearing with the leaders God appointed to his people to bring his commands and to bring them closer to God. Jesus' disciples, Peter, James, and John, are completely surprised by the whole thing and don't know what to think. Can you imagine being there with the disciples? What would you think? Then a cloud came with a big shadow over all of them, with a voice that said, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." Ah, there's that listening again. And then Moses and Elijah were gone. The last time we heard God telling us about Jesus was at the baptism, where he said Jesus was his beloved son and that he was pleased with him. So this takes it even further. Jesus is God's beloved son, but we need to listen to him. Just as God's people had to listen to the commands that Moses received on the mountain and the quiet voice that Elijah heard on the mountain. Wow! With Moses and Elijah, God never told people around to listen to Moses or Elijah, only to listen to God. So Jesus is completely different. God wants us to listen to him. He truly is God, as well as having lived as a person. And this is why the story is called the Transfiguration. Jesus was always the Son of God and fully human, so Jesus didn't change. But at the Transfiguration, Jesus' disciples were changed because they were able to see who Jesus was. So while Jesus' appearance was transfigured, what really changed in the story was not Jesus, but his disciples' understanding. At the end of the story, coming down from the mountain, Jesus tells Peter, James, and John not to tell anyone what they saw until he had risen from the dead. They were very curious what rising from the dead meant, and they would need to wait until the resurrection to see that. So what would you have thought if you were one of the disciples? How does Jesus' transfiguration change your understanding of him?